Welcome to the 2014 RAPS, the Regulatory Convergence. Please turn off or silence all mobile devices. Now, please welcome RAPS Executive Director, Dr. Sherry Karamidas, and Chairman of the RAPS Board of Directors, Don Middlebrook.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Convergence meeting. Welcome to Austin. We're glad you're here.
I don't know if you noticed, but do you like our new attire? I really like this.
Nice jacket.
Just in case you haven't seen these before, they're part of a new ad campaign which is displayed here and outside, and you may have seen it previously. And what this represents is the sense of community around the world that RAPS is trying to create for the regulatory profession. And in fact, this gathering of the global regulatory community is the whole purpose of Convergence. You are part of an important community, part of our gang, if you will, and we're so glad to have you here, over 2,000 of you from 40 countries. So welcome. We also want to thank our sponsors who've done such an excellent job in providing support for this meeting. And we're especially grateful to Austin, a really hospitable city and a hub of innovation. And innovation is a theme that we're going to be talking about for the next 2 days.
That's right, Sherry. And, you know, this meeting this year, I want to say a few words just to sort of kick it off. You know, in the regulatory world, convergence is critically important. Convergence of ideas, convergence of approaches to regulation, convergence of organizations or people working together towards a common goal, improving health and quality of life for people around the world. At this year's 2014 Regulatory Convergence meeting, we are bringing together people, ideas, organizations, and working towards regulatory excellence. This is the largest gathering of the regulatory community and a key component of the RAPS overall goal to drive regulatory excellence. At this year's Convergence, we have a Texas-sized lineup for you guys with over 70 sessions and 250 presenters in 5 distinct tracks. The exhibition hall this year, we will offer you the opportunity to talk with more than 100 different companies that offer services and solutions that are really designed to make your job easier. You know, driving regulatory excellence entails not only addressing existing products, but also rising to the challenges that will be posed as emerging new technologies come forth. Let's look at some examples of that.
We can now engineer tissue. So already we've put an engineered bladder into a young girl. Trachea has gone into patients. What you see here is basically an ink cartridge, and they take cells from the fat pad, they convert them into cardiac cells, and it goes into this printer. So they're heart cells. And in that green there, it's spraying out the heart cells in the shape of a 2-chamber heart. And that's what you see here. But you say big whoop, and then all of a sudden you look under the microscope at this heart, and it beats. And so that's the power of it, is you put cells in the right structure and they actually function. So this year you're going to see an explosion of these technologies to help us all live longer and better. Right now you can stand on your scale, it communicates to your smartphone. You could check your blood pressure every day and all of that data can go to your doctor. Well, I can now take my smartphone here and I can actually put my fingers on it and I can get an EKG reading. And this EKG reading I can take anywhere and send it to my doctor. So the notion of having to go to your doctor's office to generate data and then talking about it is out. You're going to generate the data at home and then discuss it with your doctor when you get there. And so it's going to bring a much more powerful interaction between the doctor and the patient. You have 10-fold more bacteria in your body than you do cells in the body. And these bacteria control your metabolism, your hormone level. They control many things about you. In fact, if you take a fat human and take bacteria from them and put it into a skinny mouse, the mouse will become fat. And the converse is also true. So going forward, we're going to use these to modulate our risk for disease. If you say, I'm high risk for heart disease, I may tell a patient to take a particular yogurt to lower that risk. It's going to be very exciting. This is the era of molecular technology, where we can actually target a receptor, target an on switch in a disease. And so diseases like insomnia, you know, right now sleeping pills, they turn off and they stimulate the sleep center in the brain. And you have a sleep center and a wake center. Well, most of us are already tired, but we can't fall asleep. The new generation of pills will actually target the wake center and have a dramatically different effect, so that hopefully there'll be less side effects and all of us can fall asleep. Obviously, it's better not to use a pill at all. But there are going to be breakthrough drugs for hepatitis C, for diabetes, and more of these targeted molecular therapies in cancer. Very exciting year for what's going to come.
Very cool.
And even though we're mostly through 2014, there's great innovations that are happening. These are just examples of some of the innovations that are on our doorstep today. I ask you, are we ready to handle these kind of innovations? Are you ready as a regulatory professional? Are our regulatory systems prepared for this? Let's think about that over the next few days. But let's not overlook some of the great discoveries from the past and how the regulatory system and you as regulatory professionals have adapted. Think, for example, of a child or adult who is able to hear for the first time based on a cochlear implant. Think about the advances that have been made in treating HIV or in creating vaccines to prevent childhood illness. Think about the introduction of drug-eluting stents or new imaging techniques. Or also think about the case of Kalydeco, a drug that really manages cystic fibrosis. You may recall a few years ago at our Convergence conference, we actually had representatives from the CF Foundation, from Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and regulators from the US and EU as they talked about an adaptive approval process to handle these kinds of drugs. But let's also think about some of the crises that are on our doorstep and maybe looming. Think about the Ebola crisis, for example. How are innovators, regulators, and public health officials going to come together to handle these kinds of crises? What is your role in this process? So let's think about how we are all critical to the global health community. You are absolutely critical to that process.
That's right, Sherry. And, you know, I've been in this profession for a long time, and I've lived through innovation, a healthcare crisis, the evolution of the regulatory process. It's been a real honor for me to be part of this process and be part of this profession that is willing and able to really look ahead. This is something that we must, as a society, continue to do. As we look ahead, we also need to consider the external market forces driving change and challenging the regulatory professionals. The rise, such as the rise of chronic disease, aging of the populations, economic considerations, advances in the art of technology, just to name a few. Not to mention, really, the complexity of the healthcare product life cycle itself. So we live amid constant change today. And our regulatory framework must also adapt. While this is clearly a challenge, it's also a great opportunity for the regulatory professionals to leverage the knowledge and to engage. To be effective, we must continue to keep up with change, and having a community and its resources to rely on are absolutely crucial. So our knowledge is also global. Even if your job is focused on a particular region or a country, healthcare is global. The issues that drive new regulations and the regulatory approaches reach beyond the borders today. And this applies whether you work in a regulatory agency, the industry, or in some other setting. The need for skilled, knowledgeable, and highly competent regulatory professionals at every level, both in industry and working in the healthcare authorities, has never been greater. We are a critical profession in the healthcare product sector. Our scope of work extends throughout the product life cycle and really across borders. So like all learned professions, our work is based upon competencies, knowledge, and skills. Competencies shared between regulators, industry, and around the globe.
You know, more than 10 years ago, RAPS released its first regulatory professional development framework. And this was a framework that described the competencies of all of you from the time that you enter the profession through mid-levels and then to executive and leadership roles. These competencies were based on looking at what you do, the actual work that you perform. And whether you are working for a regulator, in industry, a clinical setting, or others, they all apply. About 2 years ago, the Institute of Medicine released a report done by an expert panel that looked at how we assure the safety and effectiveness of medical products and foods around the world, and is specifically coming into the United States. That report was very significant in a number of aspects, but most importantly, it talked about the regulatory profession worldwide and the need for developing a competent workforce and effectively preparing and training that workforce. A year ago, RAPS and the International Food Protection Training Institute were awarded a contract by the International Programs Office of the US FDA to begin to describe the competencies of regulatory professionals in low and middle income countries, and then to develop a curriculum framework based on these competencies to train regulators. This project is completing its first year, and thanks to an expert panel that includes people from around the world, from industry and regulators, we will have a competency framework and a curriculum framework. The next part of this project will continue into 2015, and we'll be working on tools to allow organizations to assess the readiness and competency of their regulatory workforce, to align that with their development plans, and then to create training plans with the idea that we will begin to train a competent regulatory workforce among regulatory agencies around the world, including in low and middle income countries. Regulators who are competent in their abilities, who are confident in their abilities to handle the issues and challenges in their country, in their region, and then contribute to the discussions on innovation and regulatory convergence. But this is only part of the work that we have done. We need to adapt to the changes as science and technology evolve, as we just said. For over 20 years, RAPS has been studying the scope of practice and compensation of regulatory professionals around the world. And for those of you who have not seen the 2014 report, I invite you to take a look on the RAPS website. So thanks to you and your colleagues, and more than 3,600 of them around the world in 68 countries this year, we learned about your work. We learned that whether you work in a regulatory agency, in industry, or other settings, there are certain facets of your work that you share. We also found that the competencies and nature of work transcend borders. We also found out that there's an evolution, a progression as you advance in your career. Your roles and responsibilities grow and change as you move from entry to mid-level and senior levels. And we also confirmed that regulatory typically is not your first career. Most of us come from other fields of science, clinical practice, engineering, and related fields, and we move into regulatory. But in fact, this is a really good thing, because as we come from these other professions, we bring knowledge, skills, and competencies that in fact enrich the regulatory profession. They contribute to our ability to perform our work and to think critically. As I said before, and as Don pointed out, innovation is here to stay, thank goodness, especially for those of us that are aging. But regulatory is a critical part of ensuring that these innovations in science and technology are really driving into our healthcare sector. Regulatory capacity is essential to innovation. And to lay the groundwork, as Don said, we must have regulations based on sound science and capable of keeping pace with the innovations that are occurring. Without this, we lose something. In fact, regulatory should not be an obstacle to innovation and better health care. It should be an enabler. You as regulatory professionals are here to help navigate the complexity of regulatory frameworks to assure that safe and effective health products reach the public around the globe. A competent regulatory workforce in regulatory agencies, in industry, and other settings is a key ingredient to all of this.
It's so true. So I hope you would all agree on the important role of the regulatory profession in global health. But let's focus on you for a minute. What is your role and what's in it for you? You know, driving regulatory excellence is a critical part of success as regulatory professionals. And as your employers, it's important for you, for your success, it's important for your employers' success, and ultimately for public health. Building a strong regulatory capability is not about saying no, it's not possible, it's about engaging, it's about thinking critically and looking at ways to apply the regulatory framework to new products. It's about using your knowledge and keeping good products on the market and about addressing challenges when they occur. It's not about learning something today and then using that forever. This profession is about continual learning and thinking. It's about integrating new science, technology, and policy in business. It's not easy. It's intellectually challenging, grant you that, but it's also extremely rewarding. And you guys make a difference. As part of Focus on the profession, we are here for you. And we are here to give you access to the tools you need to be successful. We're also here to make sure that you are front and center in discussions of good regulatory practice and good regulatory policy. People are now turning to regulatory profession for our expertise. We are ready to help you become a leader in your organizations addressing regulatory health and health-related policy.
You know, we're leading the charge to make sure that the status and stature of the regulatory profession is well understood. And as Don said, integrating this into considerations of good regulatory practice and good regulatory policy around the world. We already mentioned the Global Competency Project, which is really, really important. In addition, as part of this project, we're working with the World Health Organization, the Pan American Health Organization, ASEAN, and other global health and regulatory organizations around the world. But beyond this, RAPS is also taking the known competencies, essential qualities of the regulatory professional, and we've begun to introduce a graduate medical device regulatory affairs program in Singapore in conjunction with the National University of Singapore. RAPS was very pleased to be selected by a group of agencies in Singapore to design and implement this program, which takes working professionals in government agencies and in industry together in one place, and it teaches them the knowledge and critical thinking skills required to not only understand regulations in Singapore, but in ASEAN, in Asia-Pac, in US and EU. And this unique program uses online learning combined with intensive case-based seminars taught by the leading regulatory experts from around the world, many of whom we're very pleased to have here today. We look forward to partnering with other universities and governments to create similar kinds of programs to build the regulatory workforce, a really strong and vital workforce. But building capacity also requires going beyond the entry level. We need to continue to build up. And an important component of that is the RAC. The RAC is the only post-academic credential for the regulatory profession. Many of you are very familiar with the RAC, and I invite you to find out more information if you're not. There are already over 6,000 RACs around the world. It's an important landmark in your professional journey. It demonstrates your initial knowledge and competencies, but beyond that, it shows your commitment to continued learning and development in the profession. But RAPS also knows you need other skills. In your work, whether you're in an agency or in industry or other settings, as you progress in your career, you need business skills. And many years ago, RAPS introduced an executive development program for regulatory professionals in conjunction with the Kellogg School of Management. We're broadening this to create more opportunities for you to enhance the skills that complement your regulatory program. Building capacity also means recognizing leaders. And as we talk about developing regulatory policy and capacity, we need leaders. And one program that RAPS uses to recognize the leaders is the RAPS Fellows Program. And this year, and later today, we will be officially recognizing our 4 new fellows. Our 4 new, there we go, thank you.
There they are.
Who will join the ranks of approximately 80 of their colleagues who have been recognized by RAPS and are epitomizing what this profession is about. So what does regulatory excellence mean for you? What does it mean for your employer? What does it mean for healthcare? And what does it mean to patients around the world? Well, in short, it means everything. You are driving regulatory excellence. This is more than a job. This is a profession. This is a commitment, and you're critical to advancing healthcare and the quality of life around the world.
Exactly. So you are here to position yourselves and your organizations for success. RAPS exists to position you for success, to be leaders, to be connected to one another, to advance your knowledge and to advance your career. Let's not overlook the importance of relationships also. Building relationships is essential to your success. Relationships with your counterparts in other organizational settings, relationships internally and externally, and with your cross-functional teams, with your own teams. RAPS also very much values these relationships.
And part of this that RAPS is undertaking is providing you new ways to access your colleagues. This is one important way to do that, but you need to access your colleagues on a regular basis, and we're trying to support that. We're also partnering with regulatory agencies when we talk about building regulatory capacity and looking at how we transform policies, regulations into good regulatory practice. And I do want to point out that we have more than 50 officials from over 20 regulatory agencies around the world who are speaking at the conference, and we have a large number of regulators who are also attending as participants. We're also partnering, and very pleased to be partnering, with a variety of organizations. I mentioned WHO, Pan American Health Organization. We've also had the privilege of working with APAC. We look forward to working with ICH, with Asian Harmonization Working Party, with the African Medical Regional Harmonization Initiative, and many others. We're also partnering with our exhibits and sponsors to help create events like this. And of course, we're partnering with you. We are a community. And it's not just all of us here today, it's the thousands of us, more than 25, 30,000 of us around the world that are part of the regulatory community. We're all key to this relationship. This is a challenging profession, and we need to be in this together.
No doubt. Before we move on to our esteemed keynote speaker, David Boshart, I want to briefly thank our sponsor for today's opening plenary session, GE Healthcare. Could we just take a moment and give them a quick round of applause? Thank you. Well, we have been talking about a convergence, kind of a melding of many ideas and perspectives to make something that is even stronger and can be adapted to all the changes ahead. While the regulatory profession needs to be proactive in shaping the future, we must also do so with our eyes wide open and be aware of what is happening beyond the world of science, health, technology, and regulation. We will start this convergence by looking at some of the global trends that are shaping our world today. Trends in healthcare, technology, and consumerism, from someone who has been tracking these trends very closely. Dr. David Boshart is CEO of Gottlieb Duttweiler Institute, or GDI, and is an independent think tank based in Switzerland, specializing in trends in research, retail, economics, and social issues. He holds a degree in philosophy and political theory, and he has been involved in communication and marketing consulting and retailing in the scientific research area. This morning, Dr. Boshart will expand your thinking about factors that may shape the regulatory environment. So I want to take this time right now to have you join me in welcoming Dr. David Boshart to the stage. Thank you. David, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Sherry, for your warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy and pleased to be with you and all the RAPS members. My voice might be a little bit harsh, but I guess this fits quite well with the Health Angel jacket Sherry presented to you. What I learned over the last decades being in the speakers business and in the research, know your audience. You have to know very well who your customer, who your audience is, and not just looking at figures and stories. Before former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown got elected, he decided to do something very special. He wanted to get the feeling of real people. He wanted to get the feeling of people that politicians often disconnect after their election. So Gordon Brown decided to go to prison and to visit inmates. And what does a politician do when he stands in front of people, in front of inmates? He first of all delivers a keynote address. As he wanted to be polite, he stood in front of the inmates and said, "I am very happy that you are all here." So know your audience. Let's get right into the topic. If an alien, ladies and gentlemen, if you had to explain to an alien in just one picture, one strong picture, what is the essence, what is the core of what is going on right now on planet Earth, what would be the picture you're going to paint? This is my picture. It's very real. The very fascinating question today, ladies and gentlemen, is not what can we do with technology? Wait a moment. Look at what technology already did over the past few years to you. So you see a tremendous change, and a tremendous, especially behavioral change. And I'm talking a lot about behavior. So the basic unity, the basic entity today is me and my machine. Look at 2 years ago, I got the figure from 2 years ago in the United States and the Western world. You basically, during your business hours, you looked up 25,000 times, just during business hours, your iPhone, your smartphone, 25,000 times. Today it might be 40,000 times, not counting leisure time. So then we're probably up at 50 or 60,000 times. And each time we are typing something in. The machine knows more about me, about business, about privacy. It knows more about my most intimate wishes. So basically, the machine with ever better technology, more powerful algorithms, knows about my wishes, what I think, what I do, and also what I'm going to do over the next years. So the basic unity is very strong. Look at the startups. Me and my machine, if I'm efficient, if I'm innovative, I can easily outperform large organizations. So look at what these machines do to you, or already has done with you, and look at how really the behavioral change is here. Look even at emerging nations where the economy might right now be a little bit cooled down, like in Latin America. No one wants to get rid of the machine. No one wants to cut down on expenses for the machine, even in Africa. No one, because the relationship and to feel connected and to get information is so extremely powerful. If we look at the future, there is basically two things we can try to understand. In 1970, the most famous book about the future came out, Alvin Toffler's Future Shock. It sold about 6 to 7 million copies. And all the buzzwords we are familiar with today, they're all there. For example, information overload, what that means, is already there. The key message by Alvin Toffler was, we as humans are very good, very intelligent, but we have limited capacity to stomach change. So within a certain lapse of time, we can only stomach a limited amount of change. If change is accelerating too fast, we have dysfunctional effects and side effects. For example, in health, we see more sleeping disorders than ever, we see overeating, we see drugs and things like that. So change is good, we can stomach change, but if it accelerates too fast, these functions also go up. Then last year, a friend of mine, good friend of mine, computer scientist, media theorists, professor in New York, Doug Rushkoff, wrote the book, No Longer Future Shock, but Present Shock. The basic assumption here is everything happens now. The future basically is no longer something distant, it has already collapsed into the present. Everything is happening now, so basically what we witness is we are looking for breaking news, we are looking for live tickers, so what really counts is the eternal now, it is what is going on now. And as we saw with something we would never have thought about, the selfie culture, we are now having selfies everywhere. That's very crazy. But we know with the selfies, the past never gets away. It is always there. It will not fade away. Probably you all know a world-famous slogan, City of Las Vegas, great place also for conferences, by the way. Austin is good. Very famous slogan, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. But we know this is romantic. The truth today is what happens in Las Vegas stays on YouTube. So it stays there. It stays there. So we have real-time data, and when you look at, like in the financial markets, what is really the most valuable is real-time data. A few months ago, Google bought a company that tracks Twitter messages about traffic jams in real time, and they paid, I guess, $1 or $2 billion. So real-time measuring, predicting is becoming more and more important. So this brings a shift, also of course interesting for the whole medical area, a shift from hardware to software. You know, when we do workshops with all the techie guys, there is still a battle whether software will become more important, whether both will become important. I guess 5 years from now, no one is going to speak anymore about software and hardware. But for sure, it is accelerating. And I guess Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, had the genius to understand in the future we need less physical storage. We need less shelves. So everything is now in the cloud. So we are moving from a world that has a lot of physical objects to a world where we have more storage and more cloud. Look at our homes, look at our kids, look at the toys industry. It's rapidly going away. So we have a mindset change, and I would say it as simple as possible. We want availability and accessibility whenever there is a need. There is no longer a need to buy or to be an owner, but the mindset, especially of the younger generation, is much more availability and access when there is the need to have access. Look at the car industry that's rapidly shifting. We see as more and more people are moving to cities, prices for rents and prices for apartments are going up. Why do you need 200 square meters for just 2 or 3? You can cut down on space because you need less physical stuff. Also for the car, it's very expensive to buy a car. Maintenance cost is very high. But you don't have to give up anything. Everything is available. You can share a car, you can rent a car. So we see much more swapping. We see probably much more, whoops, can I go back one? Oh, fine, yeah. We see more swapping, we see more sharing, we see more leasing. So less people are going, especially the younger generation who has to cut down on fixed costs. They are doing much more by themselves. So they want availability, they want access whenever they need it. So this is why the sharing economy is gaining now momentum, especially in the mobility sector. Look at Airbnb, look at Uber, look at these quite crazy companies that are already very strong. This means also we see much more what can be called convergence. Being a speaker in many different businesses, I saw that basically convergence is the key issue everywhere. I spoke in Austria at the Austrian Energy Conference. The key topic was convergence. Also in banking, it's convergence. So we see much more convergence, the telcos, the internet, the healthcare industry, energy, transportation, infrastructure, Internet of Things that will be very effective, especially for the older generation. So we see convergence is the driver. The question, ladies and gentlemen, is who is in the driver's seat? And we also see most often change does not come from within a certain business. It is very often the outsider. It is a maverick, someone who has not been for many decades in the industry. And so we see that a lot of changes are driven by innovations that are coming from outside. As Jeff Bezos, I think, correctly said, I don't want to employ traditional retailers. All they want to do is they want to prove me why something doesn't work. We need people who are innovative, who have fresh thinking, and try out something, because only when you start to experiment, you can push ahead the learning curve. It's very important. Without experiments in a digital world, you cannot learn. So the mavericks are here. A lot of innovation is coming very often from the outside. But convergence, I think, is very important to understand. On one side, technology is good. But as I said with Alvin Toffler, if the pace is too high, then we risk not really to take all the profit out of the technology. We have now probably 4 different speed levels. When you look at high tech, when you look at Silicon Valley, San Francisco, Austin, also the biotech industry, we might say technology-wise we are on a supersonic speed. Our business models that try to cope are they adapt quite well, but they are probably only on the sport speed level. The critical point is how we as human beings are going to organize change. I think that's critical. There we are probably only on the bike speed. And when you look at politics, how they can cope, we are probably only in the snail speed. So we have desynchronization of different speed levels. You have supersonic, Porsche, bike, and snail speed. A lot of technology that is coming is now advancing so fast. It's getting cheaper, it's getting better, it's getting more powerful. Look at Moore's law, I think it's still true. We as humans, we stay quite radically inert, we stay radically slow, and of course as humans we are quite expensive. So we have to take into consideration change also means we want a decent salary. So again, competing with technology makes technology even more as something that is more advanced. We do not take out we take out only a minor slice of what's going on in technology. So half of the gadgets that are being brought back to the retailer, they function perfectly, but people don't know how to operate that. For me, it is clear the winners are those who are faster in adopting new technologies. And we also know from innovation research, if you can adopt new technologies faster, you will be more innovative, and then you have more cash available to do new things. So this is the interesting thing. Technology is going on much faster than we as humans can cope. So the ability to cope, the intelligence to cope, is becoming much more important over the next couple of years. What are the 4 key topics we should take into consideration? Also, of course, looking at your businesses. First, of course, is complexity. So we have to navigate through exponentially growing healthcare complexity. The second, of course, do we know what we want to achieve? Very often, present shock. Everything is happening now, like in politics, it's just tactics. You just look at how you survive for the moment. But we all need desperately a vision where we want to go, what we want to achieve. Technology, I think, is very crucial, and behavioral aspects, this will be one of the key topics of my speech. Where do we stand right now? We can sum that also in a few words. Overall, I think when you look at total cost, there is still tremendous medical progress, but looking at it overall, it is slowing down. Progress in diagnosis is bigger than in therapy. There is also a certain gap. Prevention is a challenge also of the social context, and here I want to introduce the word nudge. How can we voluntarily, softly influence people's behavior? It's basically not about technology. It's how you use it to certain ends to influence people's behavior. We already know what's going on. We know that, for example, the basics are exercising, the basics are sleeping well, and the basics are eating well. If we are doing a good job there at nudging people, we already know that we have a good basis to do other preventive jobs and other jobs in the healthcare industry. And of course, we must simplify. We make things as simple as possible, but not as simple as Albert Einstein said. On one side, when you go to the tech conferences, ladies and gentlemen, you see the most optimistic people. Whenever you have these big IT or ITC conferences, this is really an issue. Think about it what you want, but it's really about the big questions. But these are the techie guys, you know, they also know how to simplify their issues. Talking about strategies and tactics, for me it is always important to have the long-term perspective and not just the tactics in mind. Do we know what we want? So basically, is higher life expectancy the goal? We have better and better data. What do we want to measure? What do we want to achieve? Do we want to just have larger organizations and better control? Do we have to give more responsibility to the individual? Do we want to have low cost? Or do we just want to go on like we did in the past? It's no simple answer. It's not very clear. Probably the best is to talk now about simplicity, because this is what is clear now. We have to be simple and to focus. Otherwise, with the many topics, we easily get lost. But we also know nothing, basically, is more difficult than doing something as simple as possible. In most cases, of course not always, but in most cases, better than the best solution is often a fast solution that is good enough. So very often we are going for too much, we are putting too much energy in the last mile where it is not needed. I guess that's 90% of our job. Herbert Simon, Nobel Prize winner, US Nobel Prize winner, once coined the word satisficing, meaning a mixture between satisfying and suffice. So for many cases, good enough services, good enough products are there to cater to the needs of our people. Only for the really innovative things, we need to go further and to do even better. And very often when we have rapid change, I believe, and this is my experience, your mental mindset is going to be decisive. How you deal with complexity, how your complexity tolerance is here is very important. How you can be a leader, let it go, sticking to something, deciding fast. These are the real issues when things are now becoming much more complex. Or as Steve Jobs famously said just before he died, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So you can only be very simple if you have achieved already a high degree of sophistication, because otherwise then you're just becoming too simplistic and destroying simplicity. For me, the best quote, this is what you do when you're going too fast. A quote by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. How do you approach simplicity as a method? It is always probably good. It seems that perfection is attained, not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing more to remove. So this is the method how you approach simplicity. Then you can ask, what is what you want to achieve? Reduce, avoid, or master complexity. You can also try to do that. Or directly seeking simplicity. Like satisficing, Herbert Simon's word, the mixture between satisfying and suffice, I think we also should look much more at common sense. Very often, the good solution is quite near. And very often, this I found in the internet, it's brilliant. You cannot say it better. You can look at it, think about it. It's very often common sense and tacit knowledge. It very often helps to understand the situation, because the more you're experienced, the more you can count on what you learned in earlier situations that are quite similar. So you're fast in decision making. And this has a lot to do with learned behavior, with tacit knowledge, and with common sense. So we tend to over-inform ourselves too much, and more often the challenge is not that we have not enough information, but that we tend to go to over-information. And of course, when we have too many informations, at a certain point, we lose track. At a certain point, we start just to stick to certain opinions. Peer pressure group is very important also in your industry. I learned that in a banking industry. You're just sticking to the opinion of an opinion leader, and then you decide emotionally and not rationally. So very often we have too many informations that creates confusion. You're still confused, but on a higher level, and you have paralyzed through too much analyze. We know from research that the willingness to pay from the customer side for services and products is much higher if they clearly simplify life. So it is clear what is the perceived value of the customer if you want to add something. Add, please, simplicity. Try to make it as simple as possible so that the customer is willing to pay for it and understand it. So more functionality of a device certainly does not automatically mean higher willingness to pay. So again, what you can take away is more important than what you can add as a method to approach things. One of the key topics, as I said, behavioral change with ever more connected devices. We already know a lot from consumer research, we know a lot from behavioral change research. What now seems, at the moment, quite clear that we have the following tendencies in a digital world. First of all, convenience is the king. So people, not only in convenience food, they look for more convenience. We all tend to become cognitive misers. We are outsourcing everything. We outsource thinking. Look at who can still perform mental math. It's all the machine. You just have to start to type in a word, and Google automatically fulfills it. So we are becoming lazy. We are becoming sort of like an automated machine. This means, and this I take it very seriously, we have a lower tolerance for complexity. We want immediate results. I witnessed it in many board meetings where the chairman said, come on, let's go to the point, not 15 slides, one slide. What is the point? What shall I do? So this impatience brings us also to less thinking and to a lower tolerance for complexity, which is important in an ever more connected world. We have a higher bar for stimulation. I think that's also well researched. I can give you an example. From the consumer side, consumers all over the world who got used to devices, they expect an ever deeper discount. So they want no longer in fashion 5%, 10% discount on an item. They already expect 20% or 25% as a discount or even more. The latest consumer research from the US was very astonishing. Guess what? 37% of US consumers, and here it comes, feel guilty if they pay regular price. 37% of US consumers already feel guilty if they pay regular price. So you already expect a discount. So we have to take these findings very seriously, or we have a growing institutional trust. We grew up with quality newspapers. It was easy to trust the written word. Today, when you look at the younger generation, they tend to trust their peers. They need at least 3, 4, or 5 sources until they start to just believe something as true. Never mind, technology is neither good nor bad. It is always both. Those who can take most of it, who can deal with it, will win. Others probably might lose. As the Canadian author Douglas Copeland said, he coined a fantastic word. He said about technology, it makes us, in a word, we are becoming more smoopidity. On one side, getting incredibly smart, smarter than any previous generation before. But on the other side, we are getting also more stupid because we are outsourcing everything, including thinking. We have, just to give you a few more typical behavioral patterns, it's interesting to see we now have speed greed. It's also well researched. When you stand in line, you immediately want the result. You're no longer willing. Year after year, the willingness to wait in line, banking, I don't know, supermarket, restaurant, wait for the waiter, it's declining and declining and declining. So we have higher customer expectations towards us. They expect us to give something, lower complexity tolerance, to give it immediately. We also know it's becoming now more important to look at decision fatigue. Guess what? The number of decisions we take over a day is exponentially growing. It's clear because we have the messages coming in, and people expect an immediate feedback. But we also know we cannot make decisions endlessly, more decisions without just having the lower quality of the decisions. So we learned that the daytime when you make important decisions is also important. So 8:30 in the morning is a good time, then you're serious. You slept well, probably. You ate well, probably. Then you're willing to do a good job. The willpower is very important. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, no important decisions because the glucose level is very low. So also the daytime is very important. So the biggest advice we can give to someone who has decision fatigue, avoid choice. Avoid choice. Delete more that gets in. So why simplicity? We all must admit we were framed in our behavior by large organizations, most of us, I think. And our mindset as specialists and managers is the mindset of operating in large, well-established organizations. But we also mean we have distorted realities. We are silo people. We are operating like in silos. And we are losing the contact, like Gordon Brown, the contact to the street. What's going on in the marketplace. So it's very important to understand real people and their real behavior. I just listed a few of interesting shortcomings of large organizations. They are everywhere, in any large organization. China, the US, Switzerland, South Africa, Brazil, it's everywhere. Why simplify? We see also not a strong, but a minor counter-trend, people who say, let's cut down on the use of technology. They want a healthier lifestyle. They say what is local and the local doctor, what is produced local, we stick to the neighborhood, is more sustainable. We want the healthy lifestyles. You see more vegans, a very strong crowd, a very strong tribe. People who want to slow down their lifestyles. So this is a trend that is, it's not, of course, a majority, but I would take it into consideration even for the medical and the healthcare section. Because on one side we see much more high-tech, but it's functional, it's enhancing, it's hypernatural, it's ultra-fast, it's convenient. So we see a couple of people say back to basics. We have to stick to more human treatment, because this could mean, I don't know whether it's true, it could mean lower costs. So classical medical treatment and checking. More rudimentary medicine, stop the erosion of examination skills and things like that. So in early area, doctors would have performed a physical examination to make a diagnosis. Today, they directly rely and stick to their medical devices, which of course they need. But they outsource thinking, they outsource other sources of information. So a too high presence of technology might make them negligent, careless. Instead of looking and listening and sweeping, they are no longer caring for their examination skills. This is a minor group, but I think it's interesting also to listen to them. When we look at, for example, the airline industry, they heavily make use of checklists. In many high-risk fields, checklists have been used since many years. So we know also that many medical errors in hospitals are absolutely not necessary. According to a World Health Organization studies, simple quality controls can already help lower the number of serious complications by 1/3 or even more, cases of death even at 40% in both the emerging nations and the developed nations. So sticking to the simple can also mean whenever it is necessary, stick together physically. Try to feel, try to smell your neighbor, try to smell the other professional. We also know when we make experiments, people perform better, are more engaged when they are together physically, rather when they are just electronically exchanging information. There also has been marvelous research about these topics. So when you look at experiments, it's interesting to see people who meet physically, they can feel each other. They see whether you're engaged or not. Whereas electronically, you don't know whether they are just having a shorter attention span, doing other things while connecting with you. So the performance of well-developed groups and groups that are willing to share insight, the performance is higher whether than you're doing it online. It's interesting to see also when you look at building trust. You can only build trust, which is more than just accountability, when you have certain common experiences. Look at this cat. What's going on in the mind of the cat? So building trust only counts when we have certain common experiences. So how can we seriously influence people, nudge them? I think this is one of the most fascinating books that came out over the last decade by Thaler and Sunstein. The soft way to just influence people's behavior. That should prevent us from making bad decisions, even if we simplify decisions. So nudging means be polite, be friendly, but tell a person very clearly, if it doesn't perform or go in a certain direction, it might harm her future, it might harm his or her health. I can give you one example how powerful nudging, well executed is that even governments today, they hire nudging experts. The UK government did it. I just learned that Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor, also hired a specialist team of nudgers who just should bring people to a certain behavior. I can tell you what the UK government did because they wanted to try to reduce debt, fraud, and tax avoidance. So here is the list. Again, just as simple as possible. The first understanding was make it easy, make it simple for people. So make it straightforward as possible for people to pay tax or debt, for example, by pre-populating a form with information they already held. Highlight the key messages, very practical. Use personal language, so personalized language, so that people understand why a message or a process is relevant to them. For as a specialist, relevance is completely differently defined from our target groups. We should never underrate that. Prompt honesty at key moments, it's very crucial, I think. Tell people what others are doing. That's also a very crucial moment. So highlight the positive behavior of others. For instance, that 9 out of 10 people pay their tax on time. It has a tremendous effect. Or when you look at the hotel industry, very often they say we're a sustainable hotel, so please reuse your towels. If you just say reuse your towel in your room, what is the effect? Close to zero. But if you say 90% of our guests, of the guests of this room, are reusing the towel, success rate goes up exponentially. And when you add 90% of our guests are reusing the towels, and when you check out, you're given a voucher, then the success rate is tremendous. So you also have to reward someone who performs, but you have to punish someone who does not perform. So reward desired behavior and highlight the risk and impact of dishonesty. So you have to nudge, but you have to be very clear on your messages. We need feedback systems. A real-time present shock world, ladies and gentlemen, needs nudging and it needs better feedback systems. Also, this is very well researched, especially we did a lot of studies about mobility. Feedback systems, they create immediate results. For example, when you drive through a residential area, normally you have clearly indication of speed limits and speed bumps. And there you get immediate results. So first, of course, the evidence that you're going to measure. The relevance of the speed limit, the awareness of the consequence, you might get fined or create an accident, and then the possibility to change that. So when you drive through a residential area, you immediately see, when you see speed limit, you lower your speed level by 20 or 30%, because you immediately know, intuitively, you're getting fined, or you might create an accident if you're not slowing down. So the premise of a feedback loop is simple. Provide people with information about their actions in real time, then give them a chance to change those actions, pushing them towards better behaviors. Ladies and gentlemen, ever better data. The Googles, the Amazons, the Apples are telling us that. So we need, in order to make real progress also in the healthcare industry, we need better networked information. This can help us improve behavior, nudge, and especially also self-understanding. I think why gaming is becoming such a hot topic. People want to know who they are, how they perform, how others like them, how they perform in correlation to others. They want to understand themselves better. So see what's going on in consumer markets. There we have already much more collected and networked data. On one side, when you look at the Amazons and the Googles, they collect data. Then they have tremendous analyzing power. They have also the power now to more and more predict, and then probably at the last stage also to prescribe behavior. When you look at what's going on right now, especially in the consumer field, I suggest just follow Amazon. I think that's the craziest company right now, even crazier than Google or Facebook. The same it's especially interesting to see the same is going on in China now with Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu. These are also huge data mining companies, and they have better access to more information than all of us. So what Amazon does, basically, they, also when you look back, what I said before, just look what technology has already done with us. They were the first to make clear you can use your credit card in a safe environment. Before Amazon, that was not the case. We started to rate and rank everything before all the startups movements came. Because it was Amazon who was the first to say, rate the offer, rank the music, so rating and ranking was something they invented. They were also the first to understand the collapse or the convergence between hardware and software. They were also the first to understand storage and cloud is something for going to happen more in the virtual world and no longer in the real world. They also made us leasers, no longer buyers. You know, when you buy a book, basically you have access to it. It is available whenever you need it, but you cannot download it physically on your computer. What's going on in the consumer world, and it might affect your world, I think a very fascinating parody of Amazon tells us what's going on. Please, the movie.
Amazon has patented a new technology that's pretty incredible. It's called anticipatory package shipping, which means Amazon can ship products you might buy before you even order them. It's essentially, they're turning Amazon into the psychic friends network. They use previous orders and product searches and wish lists to figure out what people might want. In other words, the future is here, and it's bringing you a 9-pack of women's socks. It really is crazy, a company knowing what you need before you even do. But what if what they're advertising is true? It could revolutionize the way we shop.
I didn't order anything.
Oh, we know.
Tissues?
Oh, your girlfriend's about to break up with you. You're gonna need them.
Okay, and this?
It's tequila. You're gonna start drinking a lot.
What is this?
A snow globe. You're gonna start collecting them for some reason. It's weird.
I don't want any of this stuff.
You will.
Diapers?
Oh, she's pregnant. It's yours.
How do you know?
Paternity test. Sign here.
Amazon. We know what you need. So shut up and take it.
That's quite brutal. But listen, these are visions, and I think they're working on it. I guess 10 years from now, we are living in a completely different world. So what we call next health, it means also better availability of data. Think of personalized medicine. We are never going to get there if we don't have better access to better networked data. So relationship, channels, brands, trust are changing over the coming years. It is really a converging world. The question is, who is the driver, who is the pusher, and who is the follower? Because when you're just a follower, you might run into trouble when you look at your margin. So self-programmation is an interesting topic. Quantified self, of course, this became a buzzword over the last 3 years. And the benchmarked life. Predictive medicine, a very interesting topic. And the placebo effect, very interesting topic also. Gamification, you see that with apps, where you can discover new learning patterns and also open and social health. I will just quickly run through a couple of issues. Fixing your baby. I think also when you look at mothers, their babies, fathers, We are going to redefine what proximity means, what care means, and attention is going to be redefined. Owlet, Mimo, Sproutling, these are all new applications that allow you to monitor your baby's any movement, any sort of behavior, better breath, oxygen level, body temperature, even the activity level. You can even connect it to the room temperature, to the light level, so there are basically no limits to what's going on. Apps can indicate you, we were talking about selfies, we were talking about how we basically becoming more narcissistic because we like ourselves better. Also in terms of prevention, you can indicate how your face is going to change, how it is being ruined by drinking too much alcohol. This is now always the question, how can we nudge people to use it and to self-control them and to have better access to a learning curve. Our integrated sensors help detect injuries before they happen. So when we look at the future, we might say we will have one side is still the personal care, the human-to-human relationship. On the other side, we will have much more technology-enabled care. And of course, most of what we are going to do, look at the Internet of Things, where Cisco is one of the driving forces. Look at the Internet of Things, a lot of services will just be automated. You can call these intelligent services. I think the service of the future basically is something that is smaller, better, faster, highly integrated, highly connected, highly powerful. You don't even notice it. It is very soon ingrained in our behavior. Look at like how we operate, how we look at our machines. It is part of our body. It is part already of our culture. Feedback means also how can you leverage the knowledge of all of your customers. We know that also from retailers, clever retailers, they leverage also the feedback about products, about suppliers that should get listed and to be put on shelves. So we should better leverage the knowledge also from people. And we know also that open health and open medicine, Medify, just an interesting open source medical information platform, might help. Because when people have access, they try to cope. Of course, you need always a certain level of education. Take it for granted. But when people have better access, when they are being nudged, improve your behavior, then they get familiar with tracking, then they get familiar with learning, then they get familiar with learning even better what's going on with the state of their health. So I guess we are here already at the beginning. Small data or silo data is not enough to leverage information. So near term, it might be that the real potential of big data is not yet appreciated or not accordingly appreciated, but this might change over the coming years. Missing data connection allows only analysis in narrowly limited data silos, and most change, as I already said, is coming from outsiders. It is clear, ladies and gentlemen, Google today knows much more about side effects and the spread of colds than manufacturers, physicians, or any healthcare institutions. Mid-term, we might see a completely new relationship between customers, physicians, and healthcare professionals. Long-term, I think, as I said, we need to be very careful with privacy issues, with very careful with safety issues. But here again, we learn from retail, we learn from consumer products, people who know that they are being given something back that is of highly of value for them, then they're willing to share more data than they did in the past. The interesting question might be, let me just go quickly through that, predictive medicine, because there also from behavioral science, we learned a lot of very interesting insights. So these are my provocative questions. Think about it. What happens when we are going to continuously observe ourselves? And even minor deviations of normalcy states, they are now being recorded. That's very interesting. Why? Keep in mind, monitoring is never neutral. If you know that you're being observed, your behavior might be very different than when unobserved. So we know, for example, from a car insurer in the Netherlands, they give to the younger car drivers, they give a stick. They can put into the steering wheel, and it monitors their driving capabilities. And if they drive correctly, the annual fee goes down 35%. So this is a soft way to nudge people to behave correctly. So when people know that they're being observed, you have tremendous change in behavior. What happens when most of common diseases can be predicted with more precision? Look at Amazon. Self-monitoring has a high placebo effect and is not yet well researched. So just to be extremely brief, we can look in the future and have 4 different scenarios. Of course, you can say we can seek status quo. That might happen nearly everywhere, because it's the easiest way. We can hope for pervasive hyper-smart tech. This is where the real innovators and the disruptors are coming to. Then in the very long run, you might even opt for transhuman enhancement, superintelligence, and genetic engineering. This, of course, the safety rules are tremendous, but it's clear that all the competition of nations, that you want more intelligent people, all that's happening in the secrecy of any research field, highly secret, it's going to happen at a certain degree. Or the traditional, the conservative scenario, going back to basics and return to rudimentary medicine. Coming to the conclusion, to wrap that all up, I might say most new services, clearly I think, are coming from technologies that allow us monitoring and improving of prevention and therefore influencing healthcare and therapeutical areas. The convergence of healthcare products and other services ranging from sports over fashion to sleep goes on. So these are also converging markets that are interesting to look at. Very often the idea is already here. When you look at the wearables, when you look at all these devices, it's here. But you cannot exactly say when they gain momentum. It is like with paying systems, the Apples are there, the Googles are there. You cannot say when it gains momentum. But when it does gain momentum, then it is extremely fast in the mainstream market. Look at the iPhone. It came out in 2007. Look at the tablets. The first iPad came out a little bit than 4 years ago. Again, it's not just looking at what we can do with technology. Look at your own behavior, what technology already did to you, in good and in bad. So nudging practices are powerful. It helps us to understand better how we should behave and how we could behave. Healthcare services will continuously improve customer orientation, feedback systems, feedback loops, sharing information, sharing interaction. More efficient feedback loops are needed. And the better trust is established among the different players. Look at the cat and look at the dogs. The better trust is established, not just accountability, the more valuable the relationship becomes. Keep that in mind. Trust is the best indicator of how valuable a relationship is. Because when you can trust someone, when you're familiar with someone, when you have the confidence, you're much faster in decision making. And with that, I'm done. I hope you have a very good conference, find the right answers to your highly complex questions, but I do wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Bossart. What a great message and a wonderful way to open the RAPS 2014 conference. I think a lot of you, like I was sitting there, were thinking about how relevant this is actually to what we do in regulatory affairs every day. I particularly thought about the word complexity, as you mentioned it, and the importance of coming up with simple solutions in a complex world as we deal with complex problems in regulatory affairs throughout our profession. At GE Healthcare, we have an initiative called Simplification, which is similar to what Dr. Bossart spoke about regarding complexity. And we believe that simplification is a team sport. It's one that is not a project, it's a culture. And that the culture of simplification will help us be a better company for patients and customers. And every employee is actually encouraged to partake in this and to think about how they would take complex problems and come up with simple solutions. I was at a leadership forum that RAPS put together yesterday, and one of the things that we talked about was really a complex case study that was put together and the role of regulatory as leaders within our companies. we talked about our network and how important the regulatory people or regulatory affairs is within that network in our companies. We are one of the professions that touches every single cross-functional team within our company, and how important it is that the role that we play and the leadership skills that we display when there are complex problems, to work cross-functionally, to build those relationships and the trust, and to be able to really come up with solutions that make sense, the simple, right solution. So as you go through these sessions today and tomorrow and on Wednesday, think about how you would take complex problems and develop the right simple solution, and how this applies to your role in regulatory affairs. It is truly one of the things that takes us from being a good regulatory professional to a great one. So with that, on behalf of GE Healthcare, I am proud to kick off the RAPS 2014 conference. I hope you learn a lot, you network a lot, and you think about the role of solving problems, solving complex problems in a simple way in your lives as regulatory professionals. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Lila. We're very pleased to have GE as our partner and sponsor of our opening session, as we're very grateful to all our other sponsors and exhibitors. You know, Dr. Bossart, I really want to also pick up on another theme that you mentioned in your closing, and that was trust. We heard many years ago from someone from the Kellogg School of Management that as we look at the healthcare product sector, consumers don't trust us. They don't trust industry, and they don't trust regulators. And when you looked at them on a scale of trust, they fell below the tobacco industry and the car industry. That's really an important message as we think about moving forward. Why those perceptions exist, I'm not here to explain. But we have a challenge in front of us. We have great innovation. We have a very complex regulatory system that's designed to present and protect us. But we need to make sure that understanding of the processes that we go through to make sure that safe and effective health products reach the public are clearly understood. How do we take a complex system and simplify it? So I think in building trust, your concept of complexity as it relates to the regulatory profession is absolutely critical. And that's one of the things that we're here today. We're here to learn, to meet face-to-face, as Dr. Bossart pointed out, and to learn how we can take the complexities of what we deal with today, what we deal with tomorrow, and simplify it so that we can build trust and effectiveness. And if you'd like the jackets that we were wearing this morning, you can see them again later on down at the RAPS booth in the exhibit hall. And in addition, I also want to point out that we have another beautiful RAPS jersey, and you can pick out the origins of this jersey. And for the first 25 people who either join RAPS, if you're non-members, or if you renew your membership, you can get one of these great jerseys. If you're an RAC, all the more importance to you, and if you're not, it's a good motivation to think about getting the RAC. I also want to remind you that when we finish this opening session, we'll have a wonderful coffee break down in the exhibit hall, and lunch will be served in the exhibit hall as well, and we're going to have a terrific reception hosted by the great food trucks and food industry around Austin, so you're going to get a taste of the Austin culinary treats that we have to offer. Tomorrow we'll also have our breaks and luncheon in the exhibit hall, followed by a reception tomorrow evening over at the Hilton Hotel. And we're going to have a terrific series of sessions for you and a great closing session that will look at both the challenges and opportunities of innovation, regulation, and meeting the demands of the healthcare sector and our public expectations worldwide. So now I invite you to partake of the sessions, go down to the exhibit hall, meet with your colleagues, have some coffee, and I'll look forward to seeing you over the next 2.5 days. Thank you.